Don't forget to like, subscribe and share the videos.
Hello all, welcome to Ganesh IAS Academy. This is the special session. In this session, we are going to discuss about the previous year UPSC Mains economic question. Let's begin the session. This question was asked in 2024, which is the last mains. So it is a 10 mark, 150 words question. The question is, examine the pattern and the trend of public expenditures on social services in the post-reform period in India. To what extent this has been in consonance with achieving the objective of the inclusive growth. So first of all, you need to find the keywords. So this question is about public expenditure, and it is specifically speaking about the social service. Next keyword is post reform, which means it is a LPG era. Next, another keyword here is inclusive growth. So there are three keywords in this question. The major issue with this question is, to answer this question, you have to give a loaded of data, which means you have to know about the budget expenditures related to the health. You have to know about the budget expenditure related to the education, and also to the vulnerable sectors, to the old age people, to the children, to the women. So in that manner, you have to know the lot of data. Based on that data only, you can easily address this question. If you are giving an answer, there is a change in budget expenditures related to the social service, related to the skill, education, there is an increase. You just say in terms of words like increased or decreased means that is not a valid answer. So this question is need of in a lot of data. You have to give the data in terms of percentage of GDP. So how much percentage of GDP spending it is increased towards certain specific sectors. In that way, you have to give the answer. If you don't have that answer, means if you are trying to address this question, means it is not that much efficient to get more marks for this question. That is the major issue with this question. So here the keywords are public expenditures, post reform, and also inclusive growth. So this question is mainly speaking about the pattern and trends of the public expenditures on the social services. Next subsidiary keyword here is post reform and then the inclusive growth. So you have to address the keyword. The intro should be based on the public expenditure, because that is the main keyword for this question, and also it is speaking about a social service. So you can easily give the introduction as a definition for the social service sector. So the definition for the social service sector is nothing but it is about education, employment, or else reduction in the poverty, women empowerment. So these are the broad perspective of the social service sectors. So you can give simply about the public expenditure on the social sector. So you can define it. You can simply give the introduction based on what is social service. In that way also you can give the introduction, or else you can speak about the public expenditures on the budget related to the social service sectors. Overall picture like this much percentage, around 4% increases in the GDP, 4% increases in the spending on in terms of comparison of 2022-23 to 2023 to 24. You can give the data like that also, you can give the intro. So it's up to you. If you know the data, you can start with the data itself, that is more accurate answer. So that is the first thing you have to do. Next, you have to address the questions. First of all, you have to give the subheadings. So here they examine the pattern and the trends. So what is the pattern change? You have to give the comparison. post LPG era, and then now present date. So how there is a change in the pattern of spending toward the social service sector. So first of all, you have to think why they are connecting this post reform period and then the social sector. What is the need for it? So that is more important thing before you are going to address this question. So the reason behind why they are connecting this LPG era with the social sector is, after this LPG era, what happened is the spending towards social sectors, mainly about education and then health, drastically reduced. The reason is privatization of educational services and the health services, or else you can say that growth in private players in the educational sector and the health sector. So that is the major thing. So when we comparing to the pre-LPG era, there will be the major schools and colleges or the hospitals, or it comes under the public sector. So it is the government colleges or the government hospitals. Later on, after that LPG era, the private player, the dominance of the private player in the education sectors and the health sector become the more dominant one. So that is the reason they are asking these kinds of questions. So first of all, you have to think why this question was asked. So that is the thing you have to do, based on which only you can give a more accurate answer for this question. So you can give the answer by starting the paragraph answer like saying that after the post, in the time of post LPG era, there is the reduction in the spending on the education and health. The reason is the growth of private player in education and then health. Okay, so you have to give that. So the government focus related to the education and health, it's diverted, and they become more focused on the regulation parts of this private player. They are not ready to spend on them. They are only focusing on regulating them. So their shift happened after this LPG era. So you have to say that, and also due to the privatization and also plus globalization, and then due to the liberalization, all this thing plays the major and vital role in this health and education sector. So you have to speak it in a one paragraph answer. Then you have to give the loaded data of answers. For example, trend. When it comes to the health sector, in 1999 it's 1%, now it is 2.1%. But in terms of percentage of GDP, you are looking that it is increased. But consider that, for example, in 1990, okay, the GDP of India is, consider it as 100 rupees. Okay, so in terms of GDP, they are spending 1 rupee for it. But in 2024, consider it is around 1 lakh. Okay, so in that 1 lakh, they are spending 2%, means which is obviously higher. Okay, so in that scenario, you can say that there is an increased spending. Okay, so that is a justifiable answer. But when it comes to terms of population, in terms of population, India is the first largest population. So in that scenario, this 2.1% is very, very, very low. So you have to give that the pattern and then the trend. So your answer should be like, you have to say that, you have to say the data afterwards. So your answer should be like the pattern which shows that increases. but the trend, it shows the decreases. So you have to give the answer in that perspective. So pattern and trend, pattern and trend. This is how you have to give the answer. That is the perfectly structured answer. So that is more important. Okay. So pattern. So pattern here is 1% is now it is increased to 2.1%. That is the good thing. But when it comes to in terms of population, there is a trend is showing that there is a reduction in the expenditure. So you have to give that as the answer. Next, when it comes to the education sector, see, in 1990s it's the 4% of GDP. Now it is 3%. Even national education policy says that 6% of the GDP should be spent for the education sector, but that is not happening. So you have to speak that also. So the pattern here, the pattern for the education, here it is health, here it is education. The pattern also decreasing and the trend also showing the decreasing. So this is how you have to give the answer. So this is the structuring of your answer. Pattern, trend, pattern, trend. Pattern should be loaded with the data, and a trend should be, you have to say that based on the analysis basis. Okay. So your answer should be like analyzing of that spending pattern. Next is about related to the poverty reduction. So they are gave the many schemes like MG Narega, okay, National Rural Livelihood Missions, and also direct benefit transfer, even Awas Yojana, okay, and then the rural electrifications, Saubhagya. So there are many schemes related to the poverty reductions. They did it. Even for women empowerment, there is a many schemes. Okay, Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao. There are many schemes they did it, but the trend, the pattern is showing that there is increases in the expenditure, but again the trend which is low. The reason is rural population facing the disguised unemployment, and also women is the major population in the rural area. They are facing many discriminations still. So again the pattern and the trend shows that the reduction in the spending. So when it comes to the pattern, there is a different picture. But when it comes to the trend, there is the reduction in the expenditure. So that is how the post LPG era shows that there is the very drastic reduction related to the social sector. That is what happened. So you have to give that in your answer. Okay. Next. So there is another data. You can say that based on the poverty reduction, still there is 271 million people lifted out of the poverty from 2006 to 2016. Okay, but there is a major population are living under the below poverty line and the extreme poverty. So you have to say that also. Okay, so in terms of poverty, women empowerment, health, education, even child, okay, so in that terms you can say many more answers. Even for when it comes to the Nirbhaya fund, you can say that also. There is a huge spending towards the Nirbhaya fund, but the trend of spending on that fund to the people is very limited. Okay, so in that way you can say the answers in a pattern and the trend, pattern and the trend. Okay, so this is the best answer for the first part of the question. Next, to what extent has been in consonance with the achieving the objective of the inclusive growth? So that is the next question. So you have to give a one line intro for this inclusive growth before starting the answer for that question. So what is inclusive growth? Which means opportunities for all. So everyone get benefited. There is no discrimination, and also equality, equality and equity in growth. That is called as inclusive growth. Okay, so that is called as inclusive growth. So you have to say that after this LPG era, whether it is in consonance with the inclusive growth or not, or else to what extent it did it. Okay, so for example, they gave many schemes related to the poverty reduction, but whether it gave the any fruitful outcome or not, in that way you have to give the answer. Or else they provided many schemes related to the education, they provided many schemes related to the health. To what extent it created the equality and the equity, and also it created inclusive growth in the society. So in that way you have to give the answer. So the trend here is still you can say that 271 million people are lifted out of poverty. So to what extent means there is a lifting from the poverty, means you are creating a some equality and also equity in the society. So inclusive growth is happening. Okay, and also when it comes to the health sector, when based on the Ayushman Bharat, there are 34 crores individual having the Ayushman card, so they can avail the health services easily. So that is also creating the inclusive growth based on the reduction in the out of pocket expenditure. So try to use certain terms. So out of pocket expenditure reduced. Okay, so that is creating the inclusive growth. Next, based on the MG Narega, around 390 crore populations, 90 crore persons per day. Okay, which means not that much population. Actually, it says that every day. Okay, cumulatively for 365 days, how many persons are working? In that terms, it is saying that. So it created a job for the persons. Next, for a women empowerment, there is 9 crore LPG connections gave to the women. So these are the two extents. To what extent it creating the inclusive growth? So which means it is trying to create the inclusive growth. So which means you can say that there is a certain achievement did after this LPG era, but there is a issue whether still it is inclusive growth or not. No, the reason is skewed growth, which means rural areas still facing the many poverty issue, many discriminative issues, unemployment, and spending is very low when it comes to the rural area comparing to the urban area. So there is a bias. So in that terms it is the issue of inclusive growth that is not happening. Next, quality of education. Even though we are providing a right to education, right to free education, but still there is a quality of the education is very low. So that is next major issue. And also around 14.96 percentage of India's population lived in a multi-dimensional poverty. So which means still there are around 14 percentage of the population rest in the poverty, which means there is no inclusive growth. Next, when it comes to the health sector, India has only 1.4 hospital beds per 1000 people. So this is the data. So in that scenario, this is the major negative, which shows that there is a discriminative practices related to the vulnerable sector. And then there is a leakages and the corruption issues in the period sectors. So these are the major things you can say. So in that, your answer can be like, so you have to give the answer like achievements and also still need to go. In that way you can give the answer for the second question. Okay, so in the conclusion part you can say that even though we did major things related to the social sector in the post reform period, but still there is a major focus need toward the social services, and we need to spend lot toward the social services in balance with the infrastructural development. So in that way you can conclude your answer. So you shouldn't say that, please don't say that we did it, we created an inclusive growth, or else you don't say that there is no inclusive growth. Don't go for the extreme answer. Please try to give a balanced answer. So in certain things we tried to approach as the inclusive growth, and we still need to go. Okay, so in that way you can give the answer and conclude your answer. Okay, so that is the best way of concluding your answer. So for this question you have to give lot of data. So it's better to update it with certain data. If any budget is every year they are going for a budget, so in that budget you have to get a certain broad pictures related to how much they spend towards the primary sector, how much they are spent towards the secondary, how much they have spent to the tertiary sector. After that, you have to specifically focus how much they spend on the women, how much they spend on the health, how much they spend on the education. And also it is not in terms of money. Okay, this much crore, that is not needed. You have to only focus on in terms of percentage, comparing to the previous budget, how much percentage it is increased or not. So that is the only thing you need to focus, that is the only thing you have to give the answer in your mains paper. So don't go for a numbers, just focus on the percentage, that is more than enough for giving a more better answer for your mains exam. Okay, thank you.